Welcome to meet the 2021 candidates for New York City Mayor. My name is Kathleen Culhane. I'm the president of Non-Traditional Employment for Women, or NEW, and the board chair of the New York City Employment and Training Coalition. This morning, we have the pleasure of sitting down with Eric Adams for the third of our scheduled conversations with the publicly announced candidates. Thank you to the members and partners that have joined us from nearly 100 organizations to hear from the candidate. NYCETC supports the workforce development community to ensure that every New Yorker has access to the skills, training, and education needed to thrive in the local economy, and that every business is able to maintain a highly skilled workforce. NYCETC's membership is composed of nearly 180 workforce providers, educational institutions, and labor management organizations that provide job training and employment services to over 500,000 New Yorkers, making us the largest city-based workforce development coalition in the country. Thank you again for being with us this morning. I now have the pleasure of handing it over to our executive director to begin the program.
Thank you, Kathleen. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Jose Jr., and I'm the Executive Director of the New York City Employment and Training Coalition. Before we get started, all participants should know that you'll be muted for the duration of this call. Mr. Adams will be providing an opportunity to talk to us about his candidacy and answer some questions in a fireside format. We'll then open it up for a few questions from several members and partners. Please type in your questions throughout the conversation using the Q&A icon located on the bottom panel. If you're called upon to ask a question, we'll unmute you so that you may ask your question directly to our presenters. Please note that we will try our best to get to as many questions as time will allow. I want to thank Mr. Adams for his leadership and for being here with us this morning. For some background on Mr. Adams, Eric Adams was born in Brownsville neighborhood of Brooklyn in a working class home where he developed an interest in public service at the early age of 15 after he and his brother were beaten badly by police officers. He's a graduate of Bayside High School and holds an associate in arts degree in data processing from the New York City College of Technology, a Bachelor of Arts degree in criminal justice from John Jay College of Criminal Justice, and a Master of Public Administration degree from Marist College. Mr. Adams held a 22-year law enforcement career with the New York City Police Department, where he retired at the rank of captain. He co-founded 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care, and has served as president of the Grand Council of Guardians and served 4 terms in the New York State Senate representing Brooklyn. In 2013, he was elected as the first person of color to serve as Brooklyn Borough President, where he's currently serving his 2nd term. Eric, welcome. It's always good to see you, my friend. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Good seeing you, and also good seeing Kathleen. We were mashing up the Parkway during the West Indian Day Parade last year. And so it's really exciting. I just want to really take my hat off to your organization and how you are contributing to ensuring that, the city employee pool, received the level of support that it needs. And I'm looking forward to this dialogue and this conversation.
Thank you. We appreciate that. I want to begin by allowing you a moment to introduce yourself to the community. Tell us a little bit about yourself, including your public service work here in New York City.
Well, I believe my resume that you just read touched on a lot, but I think far too often we don't look at some of the failures. I believe we should have a section in our resumes that state actually the things that we failed, because we're not defined by our accomplishments, we're defined by how we recovered from those failures. And going into policing was one of them. I was arrested as a child, beat bad by police, my brother and I was really bitter after that. And it wasn't until a group of civil rights workers and civil rights leaders, Reverend Herbert Daughtry being one of them, told me and 12 other young men to go into the police department and to fight from within. And that is what I did. I spent 22 years, as you stated, becoming a police officer special assignment, sergeant, lieutenant, and a captain. But the real gift of that moment was that I was a computer programmer, and my desire was really to go in and fight from within to deal with reform, but I was able to use my computer skills. And from using those skills, teamed up with a man named Jack Maple, who's no longer with us now, and learned how to use technology to show that our city could be safe. Different city at the time, really concerned about it then. We were having 2,000 homicides a year, almost 98,000 robberies, and an equal level of felonious assaults. Every car had a no radio sign in it. We used to have industries that we built around not being safe by having a Benzie box where you would carry your radio out. We didn't realize, but that was signatures of surrender. And I learned from using that technology that we turned the dysfunctionality of public safety into a safe city. We have a long way to go in policing with our reforms that I hope to talk about later in this conversation, but we became safer. And I saw from that moment, Jose, that the city could become a more functioning city. And I started this pursuit that I am on now over 25 years. Deputy Mayor Bill Lynch sat down with him one day and said, Bill, I would like to one day run this city and move it in a direction of being more efficient and more equitable for everyone. Bill told me, Eric, you have an associate's degree. I need you to go back to school and get your bachelor's. I went back at night and got my master's, 2 classes at a time. My son was born. I started doing 1 class. He stated that you're a sergeant. I need you to become a lieutenant at least. I became a captain instead, continue to move up through the rank. He stated that I want you to get elected to state government so you can learn how to write laws. I became a state senator. I was the first African-American to chair racing and gaming, the first African-American to chair Homeland Security. Then he told me he wanted me to become a congressperson or borough president. As you know, I'm the first person of color in Brooklyn to be the borough president. So this is a clear pathway of learning as I was traveling through this professional career, because I believe this city is so much better than what we're seeing. And we often talk about the institutions in New York, the institutions and the industries, I should say, of commerce, the industries around finance, the industries around health. But there's one industry that we ignore, and that's the industry of poverty. We have made poverty profitable, and the institutionalization of poverty in this city, I believe it needs to stop. And I think that there are ways to do so. And I'm looking forward to engaging in a conversation with you and the other individuals who are listening today on my ideas around this.
Thank you for that. And so let's jump into why you decided to run for mayor.
Because our city is dysfunctional. It's something that you don't hear about often, but cities across America are dysfunctional. Here's what we do, Jose. We have one agency that creates a crisis and another agency governs to the crisis that was created. I like to always point to Archbishop Desmond Tutu's comment, and I'll paraphrase him. We spend a lifetime pulling people out of the river. No one goes upstream and find out why they fell in the first place. That is how we run our cities in America. So if you'll just use the example of the Department of Education, it creates 3 crises in the city. It creates the healthcare crisis. When you look at the fact that 70% of 12-year-olds have early signs of heart disease, and this could be directly related to the food we're serving. So while you have the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene is fighting childhood obesity, childhood diabetes, childhood asthma, we're serving our babies 960,000 meals a day that causes childhood obesity, childhood diabetes, childhood asthma. I think we need to change that. A mayor that has mayoral control can change our food system, show our children how to grow food, serve it in their cafeterias, learn how to eat a more nutritional and balanced and healthy lifestyle so that we won't have children falling into the river and pulling them out. We can prevent that. But the DOE also causes our educational problem. We just have education wrong. The team of neurologists and pediatricians that I have been meeting with to look at the first 1,000 days of life. Our children have 80% of brain growth. Yet our first formal introduction to education starts at 3K and pre-K. We miss the most important years. In Eric Adams' mayorship, every parent will have a doula so that they can learn the nutrition. They will learn the development of their child's brain, how to participate, learning how to eat the right foods. The first classrooms is in the mother's womb. And I believe that we need to give them the support they need so that child, when they start 3K and pre-K, they're ready. But here's the most startling thing. The Department of Education creates our criminal justice problem. 80% of the men and women that are at Rikers Island don't have a high school diploma or equivalency diploma upon arrival. A third of the 18 to 21-year-olds read below a 5th grade reading level. 55% have learning disabilities. Over 45% have mental health issues. And if the study that was conducted in Texas is correct, this unimaginable number that over 40% are dyslexic. So if we would have dealt with the issues of education, we would not be feeding our problems of criminal justice. So while people are engaged in a conversation of closing the buildings of Rikers Island, which is a righteous call, I say let's close the pipeline. And I believe that if you look at agency by agency, Department of Buildings, and their inability to allow restaurants to open in a timely fashion or stop work orders and continue inspections, Department of Health, all of our agencies are disaligned. And if we align our agencies and ensure that we are not in conflict with each other, but we're moving together, we can run this city in an effective way. And I believe that's what the next mayor must know how to do. We did it in the dysfunctionality of criminal justice. I believe we could do it in the dysfunctionality of Department of Education, Department of Sanitation, Department of Buildings, all of our agencies. I say over and over again to people, you look at a city and you see the city as being one entity together without fully understanding it is an accumulation of agencies. And no matter how much money you put in a dysfunctional system, you're going to get a dysfunctional product. This is not just dollars and cents, this is common sense. And I know that we need to run a common sense city that's smarter, that's smaller, and that is more efficient.
Thank you. So we're coming into the last 7 months or so, it's no surprise that the world has changed dramatically in ways that we could not have possibly foreseen prior to that. And through the spring, about 1.25 million New Yorkers face unemployment and steep economic insecurity here in the city. Nearly 900,000 private sector and government jobs were lost, and 330,000 independent contractors filed for pandemic unemployment assistance. The city's unemployment rate now still stands just above 20%. With marginalized communities facing the highest rates of displacement. So given that you decided to and were interested in running for mayor prior to the pandemic, how has it changed as a result of the pandemic? But also in considering that answer, how has it changed as a result of the social movement of Black Lives Matter?
I think it's all aligned. And let's be honest with ourselves. The issues we were facing, the healthcare crisis, the inequitable distribution of resources, the failure to support safety net hospitals, the issues around real gainful employment, even prior to the recession and prior to COVID-19, we were dealing with a deficiency deficit. It is clear that many of the men and women of this city were working long hours and not receiving the pay that they deserve. You saw in this city, based on the survey that was conducted by the United Way, over 40% of New Yorkers were having a sufficiency deficit, couldn't meet their basic needs. And so COVID-19 did not create just a crisis, but it really exposed the crisis that was existing for far too long. Yes, there were many of us and many New Yorkers who were able to go to restaurants and theater. There were many New Yorkers who were able to take that summer vacation and enjoy life. But far too many, an overwhelming number of New Yorkers were struggling to make the ends meet. And so when you see the marches of Black Lives Matter, it is not only tied to the over abusiveness of police actions, but it's really, in the words of Reverend Sharpton, take your knee off our necks in so many different areas. And I believe that this is an opportune time, now that there seems to be a political readiness to confront some of these issues, this is our opportunity to implement some real changes. And although the urgency seems to be here, Jose, my dialogue and my vision is still the same. Government is inefficient. We need to manage our assets and have an equitable distribution of resources in real time. That was important pre-coronavirus, and it's extremely important now. And many people know what happened during coronavirus. I did not disappear. I considered myself as one of those essential employees that drove our trains and stocked our supermarkets and were in our schools, in our school crossing guards. I joined them when I moved into Borough Hall and set up a command center. I knew what was happening every day on the ground. While others were in the Hamptons, I was in public housing, handing out face masks long before the mayor and the governor talked about the need of dealing with the crisis in NYCHA. I knew about the inequitable distribution of food that was sent to various communities. 90% of the people who were hospitalized had pre-existing conditions or comorbidity. Those are fancy terms for asthma and heart disease and diabetes. And I knew that we had to get healthy food on the ground to those communities. And that still stands true now. And so my commitment of how do we make this government more efficient it's not going to change because the crisis is here. Crisis is going to continue to be here. It is important and imperative that we deal with the economic crisis that we're facing. And much of that is created because we were not prepared and we could never be caught flat-footed again. And I understand that clearly because I saw it firsthand and I know what it is to cycle out of crises in an effective way.
Thank you, Eric. So as you know, over the summer, we released a report called Recovery for All, which was a vision and set of recommendations from over 80 leaders in the private and human services sectors that centers primarily on small business and workforce development for displaced workers and marginalized communities. Are there recommendations that stood out to you or that align with your vision for post-COVID recovery? Well,
first thing I would say that great minds definitely think alike. I released my real recovery plan, and really we touched on some of the same things during the report that was produced, and it was an amazing report by an amazing group of people who have really been on the front line of dealing with workforce development and employment. And I cannot thank the bodies of people that came together. So we agree in developing, expanding, and funding training programs for upskilling, reskilling, and job placement. It is so important. And I specifically believe we need to partner with job training and job placement providers, financial services, companies, large New York employers, local organizations, and landlords with, really looking at something that was pointed out. How do we localize this with local storefronts? It amazes me when we speak in echo chambers among ourselves in the elite classes and not understand that people on the ground in communities are intimidated and afraid. And if we do not really make it more user-friendly on how to get those who are needing employment to be connected to the opportunities, I think we will miss far too many. And I think the report really laid out a real blueprint that we can follow of how do we take this disjointed, dysfunctional system of looking at where the jobs are, what's the demand, and where the gap is on those who need the form of skill set and upskilling that is desired. And I also thought the report was important in that pointing out the skill gaps for those who are also looking to get into some of the workforce development programs. You and I both know many of the young people and many of the individuals who are looking for employment, they need training just to qualify for the minimum qualification to get into some of the job training programs that are available. And I really applaud, and I think we need to use the program, use the report as a blueprint for all to follow to deal with how do we close this gap of employment.
Thank you. Your report was really great and touched, as you mentioned, it touched on a number of issues that we connected on in the report as well. So it's great to see that alignment.
And if I can, Jose, also there was something else that was important that I saw in the report, and I will continue to partner with the workforce development training advisors and program, is that this is an opportunity as well. This is an opportunity to look at that checklist of all the things we were aware that our city needed to do and really didn't have the political willpower to do so, such as real green jobs and dealing with the climate crisis. How do we shore up our waterfronts? Real infrastructure building, our roads, our bridges. We know the deteriorating impact of this city. We can put in place a real municipal bond program to start doing real building. Look at NYCETC. When I walked through NYCETC the last few years and witnessed how much NYCETC need and must have real repairs. So we can utilize the needs of the city and match it with actually rebuilding our city so it can be prepared for the 21st century and start a real employment program of giving many of our low-skilled or underskilled men and women an opportunity to build the city that they are a part of. And I think that those were some of the things we witnessed in your plan that was put out. And I believe that we need to look in that direction as we rebuild the city.
Thank you. And that touches upon my next question a little bit. What steps would you take to grow the city's workforce system to ensure that it's more data informed, to ensure that the services are more easily accessible, and finally also more responsive to the labor market needs as well as the needs of all New Yorkers?
So such an important question. I'm a data guy, as I said over and over again. And the first thing we need to do, we need to correct our disjointed, disconnected pipeline. We have to fix the leaks in the pipeline, and we have to be creative in doing so. First thing, we must have a heat map, a map that outlines what services, or what I should say, what skills, where the skills gaps. How do we identify what communities are having those skill gaps? And then apply the training that's needed based on that map, based on that real-time GIS mapping system, based on the communities. And then we need to do something else and stop being afraid of doing this. We need to look at our large corporations and tell them they must come to the tables and connect them with our K-12 educational system. I think this was a big mistake that this administration made. We demonize big business. We demonize corporations. I think we have to stop doing that. They need to be part of the educational curriculum. It doesn't mean we move away and create robots in our K-12, but what we do need to do is identify what skills are needed to fill the gap in employment. There must be conversations with our educators, with TWEED, with the Department of Education, and our large corporations to find out what are the skills that you need. When I sit down with my business leaders, they often state that they can't find the skills that they need here in the city. We have 200,000 jobs, even with coronavirus, 200,000 jobs that we are unable to fill. So we don't only have an employment issue, we have a skill issue. And I would identify by using mapping, real-time mapping, where are the skill gaps, get resources there on the ground to fill those skills gaps, allow my business community to be part of shaping a real curriculum of career from K to career curriculum that will empower our young people with the skills that they need: critical thinking, communications, how to operate and work in groups. These are all the skills that we are going to need for a 21st century city. And then we have to go out and meet people where they are. Imagine this for a moment. Throughout my years in law enforcement, of walking the streets in the evening or parking my car, I did midnights throughout my year, from 11 at night to 8 in the morning. And as I move through the street, there's an entirely different body of people who are unemployed, not in school, doing nothing at all, sleep during the day, wake up at night, and just basically they're on the streets. We don't meet them where they are. We wait for them to come to us. That's not realistic. This is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week problem. We need a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week solution. So what does that mean? Some of our recruiters can't stay in their office space. They must go into the streets and identify those pockets areas by using that mapping system and go out and hand out information to our young people, engaging with them one-on-one, street corners, in the parks. And let's see how we retrofit our police department to be more proactive instead of reactive. What does that look like, Eric? It looks like giving our police officers on patrol resource information. Instead of pulling up next to young people and harassing them, getting out their vehicles or walking and giving them information about job training, locations where you can get assistance on employment, skill training, early reentry programs. Why is that important? Because what we're going to start doing, we're going to start changing the narrative with law enforcement. Right now, only time we see our police officers is when they're telling you not to do something, or you're doing something wrong, giving you a summons or arresting you. No one interacts with a police officer to invite them to a birthday party. They call them when someone has disrupted the birthday party. We need to change that dynamic, have our police play a more proactive, engaging role to understand the communities they're policing, and also use that 24-hour, 7-day-a-week operation to disseminate the information to empower people where they are on the ground, partnering with local community-based organizations, getting the information out to people so that they can find the resources. Believe it or not, many people are not finding the resources because they don't know where to go or where to look, because we're not meeting them on the ground at the same time. And I want to change that dynamic. That's what I saw as a police officer, as a state senator, and even as the borough president, as I walked the streets of the city of New York throughout the day, afternoon, and evening hours.
Thanks, Eric. So take a few moments as we wrap up our Q&A and move into the questions from other folks who are joining us today. Tell us, what do you expect your priorities to be within the first 100 days?
I love that question because it's crucial when you look at the first 100 days and how are you going to move the city forward in the first 100 days. First thing we're going to do, we're going to put in place commissioners that understand the new model of running cities, not to be dysfunctional, but functional. They're going to go into each of their agencies and they're going to identify the mission. What is their core mission? And it's going to be clear. We're going to make sure that core mission is tied into the overall mission of the city. And this is all going to be done in the first 30 days. And the third thing they're going to do, they're going to look at their actions, and they're going to make sure no action of a city, of an agency, is in conflict with the mission of another agency. And then we're going to immediately come up in the first 30 days with how do we go in and remove those areas of the agencies to find cost savings, efficiency, and how do you run the city. I think every agency could have anywhere from a 5 to 10% decrease in the dollars that they're spending. We hemorrhage money because we're not running our city efficiently. And I'm sitting down now with those who I believe, so we can hit the ground running, who I believe would be great commissioners to lead the agencies and think in a different fashion. Second, we're going to put in place a city stat program to computerize how to run the city using the dashboard so every New Yorker would understand how the city is operating, where to access the services, how to know what's going on in city government. Something that is done in Boston that I'm really an admirer of, they have one number that identifies the overall health of the city. When that numbers drops, it pinpoints where it's dropping, if it's in education, if it's in health and wellness, if it's in cleanliness. This is the way that you run cities in real time, and we're going to do the same thing here in this city. Third, we're going to hire a chief diversity officer. It's crucial that we look at the diversity, and how do we look at those communities that were impacted by coronavirus the most? How do we ensure that we get resources to those communities and make sure that the procurement contracts of this city is going to be reflective of the diversity of this city? And I'm going to put that in place. Second, we're going to put in place a revenue generator czar. How do we look at our assets of this city and start to generate revenue? It has to be more than just increasing taxes. We have to think differently. We have to think not only outside the box, but we have to destroy the box. And the city's assets must be better utilized to generate revenue. And that czar will have the responsibility to do that. Next, I'm going to, in the first 100 days, I'm going to reform the New York City Police Department. I'm going to diversify the police department in a 2-year period. How am I going to do that? We have 2 levels of policing in this city. I like to call them the minor leagues and the major leagues. The major leagues of policing is made up of the New York City Police Department. But we have a minor league law enforcement force, hospital police, school safety agents, traffic enforcement agents, all of the minor leagues of law enforcement. I'm going to implement a program that I attempted to put in place under the former Police Commissioner Bernie Kerrick that he started, but Commissioner Kelly took away. I say, instead of having those officers who come into the police department only needing 2 years of college, I say life experience is just as great. Let's take those minor league law enforcement officers after 2 years of being in their law enforcement agencies that I mentioned, give them the opportunity to be promoted in the New York City Police Department. We have observed them for 2 years. We witness how they interact with the public. This will give us an opportunity to know what their abilities are. Why is that important? Over 70 to 80% of them are people of color. Overwhelming number of them are women. And you know what? They're 100% New Yorkers. So instead of 30% of our police department, over 30% of our police department coming from outside the city, we'll start hiring from within. We'll be utilizing the dollars of our tax dollars being recycled within our city. And we will have those who are coming from the communities that we want our police department to come from. And that is reform we could all live with. Then I would change the command structure. The most important area in the police department is the precinct commander. As the mayor, I will ensure that every precinct commander that's assigned to a particular precinct is interviewed by the community leaders. They will find out his mission. How is he going to address crime? How is he going to use his 200 to 300 man troops of police officers to build a better symbiotic relationship with their community? They will look at his prior record through the new laws that were passed of Article 58, where you can review the records of those who are in your precincts and police officers' records. That's so important. Now you would get an officer, a commander that fits with the community, and I think that's crucial if we want to change policing. And those would be one of my most important entities that I would look in place. And then I would put in place a citywide think tank with business, academic institutions, and government to come up with efficient ways to modernize the running of our city. I would then create technology advisory committee to look at every area of city government and see how to make it run more efficiently in technology, using technology, such as a city card system. Why do we go into agencies after agencies, Jose, and have to fill out the same forms? We can use the municipal ID program, put a chip on the back of those cards, and instead of each time we go to different agencies for our birth certificates, or to when you register for a particular license, instead of duplicating the information, you could have all this information on one card. And that's also in our MWB programs. We should not use paper and bureaucracy to prevent people from having access to government. And most importantly, I will put in place a 21 to 25-year-old advisor that will report directly to me. His role or her role is to go into our city and ensure that our youth have a real voice directly to the mayor. How is this city impacting our young people? And how do we empower them? Young people will always blow the winds of change. And I'm going to encourage our young people to take a deep breath and blow the winds of change of this city because they know how this city ought to be. And we're going to foster cross-pollination. My young children from Williamsburg would meet the young children from South Jamaica, Queens. My young children that are Asian New Yorkers will meet my Hispanic community. We're going to foster people to speak and talk to each other so we can start building a better energy in the city and know that we're all in this together. There's no more divide in this city. And I know we hear of a tale of two cities, but I have a conversation about a tale of one city. We're in this together. And in order for us to survive post-COVID-19 and the economic crisis we're facing, it is imperative that we come to the table together.
Thank you, Eric. That was a really thoughtful answer, and we appreciate that. I encourage to ensure that workforce and employment services and job training continue to be a relevant part of your administration should you have the opportunity to be elected to mayor. So we'll continue to work very closely with you, of course, to ensure that those priorities remain present. I want to now move it over to our Q&A session, and we're going to be adding some attendees here to be able to ask their questions personally. So our first question is coming from Wayne Ho, and Wayne Ho is the president and CEO of the Chinese American Planning Council. He's also our newest NYCETC board member. Wayne, are you there? Wayne, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, Mr. Borough President. Good to see you.
Always, Wayne. Good to see you as well.
Wayne Ho, President and CEO of the Chinese American Planning Council, CPC. As you know, the city of New York contracts out about $4 billion a year for human services, and then similarly $4 billion a year through the Department of Education, and then other billions of dollars for housing and other programs to support our communities. As you also know, these contracts can be cut at any time by the city. We continue to have severe lags in payment. The full cost of services are not covered in our contracts. And then last but not least, the contracts are not allowing us to pay our workers what they deserve. And as you know, during this time, our workers are essential workers. So if you were to become mayor, what would be some things that you would do to support the human services sector and reform the procurement process?
You know, Wayne, we have a schizophrenic relationship with our human service industry. In one place, we say how essential you are and how important you are. We hold ceremonies and thank you. And then in another voice, we don't pay you, we underpay you, we take so long in getting the payments out, we don't give you the infrastructure, the support that you deserve. That ends day one of the Eric Adams administration. Not only am I talking about it if I get to City Hall, but I joined Gail Brewer and the other borough presidents when we wrote a letter to the city to deal with fiscal year 20 and 21. All the promises and commitments that were made of really streamlining the process. As soon as the crisis came, all of that went out the window. That's unacceptable. First of all, we would infuse technology into ensuring you get your payment on time. You should be able to go right on your phone and know when you submit it through technology, your invoice, to make sure when that invoice, when that payment is coming through, instead of having to deal with all of this paper and layers of bureaucracy to get it done. It is too important. The human services industry in this city filling the gap that government is unable to do correctly and have not done, understanding in real time. And let's be clear, those who are coming from these nonprofits and providing these services, you're not only doing it you're not doing it just for the cost. You're not becoming a billionaire in a nonprofit. Let's understand that. You're doing it because you believe in the services. You believe in being service providers. And we have failed to adequately utilize the inroads you have made in your communities. We saw that during coronavirus. Each debriefing that the governor, the mayor, and the president did, they did it in English. They communicated in their own ecosystem. Instead of reaching out and creating a new communication network to talk about crises like coronavirus or the census, we should have empowered every census, every nonprofit, part of the various cultures and communities. We could have communicated directly with you using your local papers and communication mechanism. If we empower your sector, we empower the entire city because you are on the ground seeing firsthand of what is impacting the communities you represent. And if I could have an opportunity, Jose, to say to Wayne and the Chinese community on the whole, the Asian community on the whole, I want to say thank you. During coronavirus, when the negative rhetoric that came from Washington, D.C. of calling coronavirus the Chinese virus, the Chinese community did not say, woe is me. They said, why not me? When I reached out to my relationships in sister cities and Chinese organizations in need of PPEs, we were able to get over 200,000 PPEs from Chinese organizations in the city that they said, we want to partner with the NYCETC residents so we can give PPEs to those men and women and families in NYCETC and food deliveries. We delivered supplies to our hospitals through various Chinese organizations and groups. And so I just want to really say thank you. It is something that has gone unnoticed. Even while people were assaulting our Chinese citizens, they did not stop believing in the city. And I think they're the spirit of what it is to be an immigrant population that buys into the belief of the greatness of this city. And I just want to take that opportunity to thank you and your community.
Thank you, Eric. Our next question is coming from Valerie Payne. And Valerie Payne is also an NYCETC board member and the executive director of Rebuilding Tomorrow, New York City. There's a slight delay, so Valerie will be coming on in a second. Valerie, just let us know that you're ready to speak when you are. Valerie, can you hear us?
All right. Yes, I'm here. Good morning. And thank you, Borough President Adams. As Joey said, I'm a board member and executive director of Rebuilding Together NYC, which you might have heard of. We did a deeper dive in Brownsville, which was done just before I started a year ago, and that we hope to replicate in other parts of the city where we're providing critical home repair for low-income homeowners, recruiting folks into a construction training that leads to union apprenticeships, and brings volunteer groups when we can again to community centers to help.
I believe you're on mute.
Oh no.
No, I hear her fine. I hear Valerie fine.
Apologies.
Oh, okay, great. So we hope to again bringing volunteer groups like we did in Brownsville to other parts of the city to help kind of rebuild community centers and support their efforts as well. So my question for you: we are a really small nonprofit in New York City, serving folks that are disproportionately affected by the pandemic and racial injustice, and as Wayne pointed out, are also subject to the whims of kind of the city and their delaying payments and underfunding, et cetera. So I guess in your term as mayor, how would you support smaller nonprofits in their survival in order that they can continue to operate to serve the most vulnerable in New York City?
Really, number one, we have to take the guesswork out of the payment structure. And that's why I stated that I'm a big real-time guy and I'm a big data guy, and using technology to take the guesswork out of receiving your payments, the services you provide, making sure that we can streamline and expedite getting those payments on the ground. But second, Valerie, particularly some of the things that you're doing, and I love, I'm really impressed with your organization, and I hope offline you reach out so we can talk about how we can even expand on those partnerships. But I think that we need to change our procurement laws in the city. I want to partner with the state. We have too much that's taking place in this city, such as in the areas of construction, the area of procurement, that is really taking place outside the city. Too many vendors and individuals who are getting city contracts are coming from outside our city. So we need to hire locally. We need to use nonprofits such as yours to get some of the local contracts, some of the local construction contracts. We witnessed the city build up, and the future of the young people continue to go down. We need to change that. Right now, we have a procurement mechanism that say lowest bid. I think we need to look at best value and how by having local businesses and local entrepreneurs and local initiatives, even through our nonprofits, to provide some of the services that the city needs at this time, and even purchasing. I believe that if we change minor tweaks to our procurement laws on the state level, there's so many more things that we can do, particularly during the time we have to provide services. But in essence, it is about making sure you get the support that you need to provide those human services that you are providing in all of our nonprofits throughout this entire city.
Angie, can you hear us?
I can now, yes. Thank you so much, Joey, and good morning, Borough President Adams. I know you're a two-time CUNY grad. My name is Angie Cometh. I'm University Dean for Continuing Ed and Workforce Development, and so excited to see such a successful alumni. My question for you is, could you help to articulate your vision for how CUNY can be a real part of the solution around a lot of the equity gaps that you discussed? CUNY has so many assets that can be leveraged, not just our community colleges, and I know that you know that from, we've got senior colleges, our graduate programs, our research, our faculty. We have 30,000 faculty at CUNY, and would love to hear about how we can be a stronger and better partner. Often our community colleges are called upon to be partners with the city, but I would love to hear a more holistic way that CUNY as an entire institution can be a strong partner to City Hall.
I love that, and that's so important. And a couple of things that we learned as we cycled out of this phase of coronavirus, and I like to say this phase of coronavirus because there are fears of a reemergence. But when you look at CUNY, I believe CUNY must stop being competitive against each other. It's something that I saw in Chicago when I read Ron Emanuel's books. A book on, the restructuring of sort of their public school system, their public college system. I believe we need to stop being competitive. Prior to coronavirus, I was engaged in conversations almost 2 years ago that talked about how artificial intelligence and computer learning is going to change the workforce as we know it. It was predicted by Oxford University study that over 40% of the jobs that we are preparing our children for may not be available in the next 20 years. And it's not only factory jobs, but even if you look at the trading room floor of Wall Street, at its height, you have 5,000 employees there. Now you have 500 based on technology and artificial intelligence. You have even insurance companies like Lemonade. Lemonade's is no longer using brokers as we knew them during the times of years ago. They're now using artificial intelligence and computer learning. And so what we know as a workforce is going to change drastically. And CUNY must be prepared for that. And I believe we need to connect every level of our education, K through 12, our public school system, and our careers. That is the connection we must create. And right now there's a disjointed communication. Many of our corporations are seeing young people graduate from our community colleges and just not prepared to fill the jobs that many of our corporations are stating they're looking for. And this city is far from being dead. You know, we see Facebook's lease at the Folly building shows that many technology industries are coming here. That is the highest growing sector, the technology sector in this city. The financial sector is still here, as well as the food industry. And so if we look at the model of that New York City College of Technology, and I'm not just promoting it because I attended there and I'm an alum, but in reality, they clearly got it. We need to start preparing our children to develop their full personhood, as well as having those soft skills, some of the technical skills, and how to fit into the careers that are available. I would like to see CUNY come together, and we have to really start to think about stopping the duplication of services. Every school cannot be an expert in everything. We need to rethink our CUNY system, and if we don't, we're going to lose many of our students to the competitors outside our state. I think there's a great opportunity to realign K through 12, our CUNYs, with our corporate leaders to identify what are the pipelines to careers and gainful employment. And I'm excited about some of the brilliant people in our CUNY system. I think we have one of the best public educational systems in the country. We need to give it more support, but it's time for CUNY to really redefine itself to be prepared for the 21st century. And in order to do that, we have to really realign our entire public educational system in the city in alignment with our corporate entities.
Thank you. We're now going to David Conliffe. David is the Executive Director of Community Alternatives. And let's give him a moment to come on board. David, can you hear us?
Yes, I can now. I hope you can hear me. I'm sorry for the background.
No, we can, and we can see you.
Okay, great. Mr. Borough President, you know that groups like Center for Community Alternatives, CCA, Fortune, and Osborne believe strongly that an effective way to reduce crime is to have effective alternative to incarceration and reentry programs that include job training, mental health services, and so much else. My question specifically is how you'd reimagine the Corrections Department, and do you consider closing Rikers Island and replacing it with borough-based jails that contain space for programs like Jails to Jobs, an example of a smarter, smaller, and more efficient city?
Thank you so much for that. And I really thank the coalition on what you have really participated and have done around alternative to incarceration. I'm a big believer in that. And I think that we decrease our population, our jail population, in several different ways. There's so many alternatives that we can do. I don't believe someone should be sitting in jail for non-predatory, non-violent acts. And that really would deal with a substantial number of people who are in jail now. Home confinement operates well, and other alternatives I believe we can utilize. But also, I want to look at the term alternatives incarceration a little deeper. Not only waiting until young people reactively involved in crimes to see how do we treat them so that they don't have to go to jail. The programs that many of you, the Osmonds has been doing, I'm in full support. I've lined up with them many times to talk about how do we push forward these initiatives. But I think we could look at things also like Fair Futures. 600 to 700 young people age out of foster care every year at 21 years old. Only 12% graduate from high school, 3% enroll in college. They're more likely to be evicted, more likely to have mental health illnesses, more likely to be the victims of crime and participate in crimes. If we just take $50 million of the bloated NYPD budget and give them life coaches into 26, reports have shown over 90% will graduate from high school. A substantial number will enroll and graduate from college and won't have some of those other conditions. And so our focus should not only be reactive, but we must be proactive in preventing young people from getting involved in the criminal justice system. Mandatory testing for learning disabilities in school, mandatory testing for looking at dyslexia. Remember what my numbers were. It's a possibility that 40% of Rikers inmates are dyslexic. If we address the issues prior to our young people believing that the system is not there for them and giving up, we could prevent the introduction into criminal behavior. But then we need to put the support in organizations like yours. We can't get away from it. The reality is we have to have a long-term and an immediate term approach. And right now, even as we deal with those young people who are coming up through the system, there are those who are already caught up in the system that we need to deal with. And I am 100% in support of those programs that have an alternative to incarceration, teaching skills and utilizing our assets better. What does that look like? We have an educational system where we have these beautiful buildings that at 7 a.m. in the morning, we tell our children, welcome in. At 3 a.m., we say get out. 3 p.m., we say get out and don't come back. I think that's wrong. Let's build out all our shop classes in our high schools. Let's utilize those shop classes to teach everything from construction skills, carpentry, plumbing, being an electrician. Let's utilize the classrooms during the evening hours to teach all of those STEAM-related jobs, similar to what I'm doing now at the Brooklyn STEAM Center. I put $5 million in the program to teach our young people real pathways to real jobs. I believe that we need to utilize our city assets, such as our school buildings, to give these young people the job trainings and the skills that they need. You as a nonprofit should not be looking for space so that you can train young people when we already have our physical plants all over the city that are currently being underutilized. I say let's open the doors, let's think differently. I already started a program in the city, was able to get money to have what's called extended use, to allow nonprofits to go in and use school buildings where we pay the cost of using those school buildings instead of the nonprofits doing so. I want to go further. It's time to build out those shop classes that we used to have so our children can be ready and participate in the building of this city. I think the best way to deter a young person from carrying a gun is to give them a hammer, a screwdriver, and a skill so they can be gainfully employed.
Thank you, Eric. Our next question is from Michael Zigman. Michael is the Chief Executive Officer of New York City First. We're going to bring him on right now. Michael, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me, Joey?
We can.
Perfect. Thank you, Joey, and good morning, Borough President Adams. As someone educated in computer programming and focused on poverty, can you talk a little more specifically about your vision for K through 12 technology and engineering education as an engine for upward socioeconomic mobility? And maybe more specifically, do you have an education moonshot to help recover from this difficult environment?
So let's take it in two levels. First of all, it is unbelievable we don't have a real computer science for all program. That's frightening to me. And when you go back in 2014, the pushback I got from this administration on having a computer science for all curriculum was just unbelievable. All of our children must have a computer science for all curriculum. And we should use it as an intergenerational communication. We should encourage our middle school and high school students to go into our senior centers and really start empowering our seniors and our elders on how to have the basic understanding of computer technology. We saw the need of that during COVID-19. Then we need to have real partnerships. The computer science teacher can't be the gym teacher that we just happen to bring in the classroom. I am going to bring together my tech leaders in the city, going through Tech NYC, to create this real synergy and partnership to have our tech industry adopt schools, be part of building out the curriculum on what's needed between K through 12, looking at the potentiality of getting all of our children, like our Catholic schools, our children having notebooks or iPads. I prefer notebooks more than anything, so that they can learn and have access not only in the school environment, but even at home. It's about having those who are in the industry partner with our educators to build out a real curriculum on how and what computer science, computer training, computer knowledge for all really means and really looks like. Right now, we're nowhere near that. And I think that we do a disservice to the infrastructure that we need if we don't bring in the industry to be part of building out that real curriculum. I think that it's crucial to do so. And that is who I've been sitting down and meeting with and partnering with, those from Tech NYC and other tech leaders, to start discussing how do we roll it out in a real way? How do we build that curriculum? And also have what's in Brooklyn. I have 5 career pathways in Brooklyn. I had the Brooklyn South STEAM Center. I'm a big pipeline person. What it should look like is that my elementary school, the learning and skill set around technology that my elementary school students receive should build right into the school in their area of the middle school. And that middle school should complement that instruction that should feed right into the high school. Right now, as you have it, you could have a middle school student that receive tech training, but they don't have a high school in their area that will complement what they learn. We have to stop the destruction of that pipeline. It must be extremely fluid to make sure that my elementary school feeds and complements the learning that goes right into the middle schools, that goes right into the high schools, that feed right into our colleges. And that curriculum should be built out by those who are in the industry. And that is something that I believe we failed to do. We have demonized and turned our corporate entities into the enemy of the city, when in fact, we should demand that they do more and embrace our educational system.
Thank you, Eric. So this concludes the third of our conversations with the 2021 candidates for New York City Mayor. We want to thank you so much for your thoughtful responses to the questions. And we've heard a lot about critical issues for our city and for the workforce development sector. So I just want to give you a quick second to make any closing statement or add any additional remarks if you have them.
Yes, thank you. I believe this is an opportunity to use just a lifetime. The totality of my life has brought me here today from fighting for police reform to using technology to reverse the public safety crises in the city, and just looking at even the healthcare. My program at Bellevue Hospital, many people are aware that my reversal of diabetes and my vision loss and nerve damage, and going to a plant-based diet and being able to take that program and put it into Bellevue Hospital, where we're actually reversing diseases. It's clear that we can no longer treat symptoms. We must treat underlying causes and reasons that create the institutional poverty that we're facing. You know that more than I, as the nonprofits, workforce development, and institutions and entities that have been dealing with these issues far too often. That's what I want to bring to the city. I believe that it is time to show that this city can function. We have smart people, we have enough resources, and we have enough energy to take this city into the 21st century. Day one, I will be ready to build a city that no longer creates crises, but instead resolve crises. Thank you very much.
Yeah, can hear me, I think. Apologies. Thank you again for being with us today and for your thoughtful responses. We wish you the best of luck with your candidacy. A quick program note, we want to just remind everyone that the fourth of our Meet the 21 candidates is on October 15th. We'll be speaking with New York City Comptroller Scott Stringer. This conversation will be followed by retired Brigadier General Lori Sutton on November 5th, and others will be announced in the coming weeks. Again, thank you, Mr. Borough President, for joining us this morning. We appreciate all your support. We wish you good luck with your candidacy and enjoy the rest of your day and week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.